Hi, welcome to this little introduction to the transfer shelf, or reintroduction if you know a lot about Montessori already. So in our classroom, part of practical life is a specific shelf unit or cabinet that you can see that is all fine motor work. And it's typically color coordinated and changes with seasons and changes with studies and celebrations. Right now we have some primary colors on here. The first shelf is pouring work. And as we move from left to right on any shelf unit in the classroom, they always move from the simplest to more difficult. So in this case, and we started with dry ingredients, they're pouring water in clear containers, and it's just 1-to-1, and they have a spout, but they don't have a handle. Now we've added a handle, we've added some opaque containers, we're pouring 1-to-2, so you have to know when to stop. Now we've added a handle and some small opaque containers, we're going 1-to-3, and again, you need to know when to stop. This one's missing a little sponge. But basically, I'm gonna do it on the shelf and we would do it on the table. It requires you to turn and pay attention and have some really good developed fine motor skills. I've never taped and poured at the same time. And so this is what they're working on pouring. And later we'll add a tool, and this one should probably be remeasured just a little bit. A teacher tip is that when we're filling these, we start with full containers, but nope, it's perfect. I just was being conservative. Okay, so after they pour, and also everything is left to right, which reinforces the way we read and write in English, they're gonna go back and pour it back and make it ready. Simply carrying the trays is a skill in itself. We use real world objects and glass and ceramic, and I will make these heavier as time goes on and more involved, and we'll add a funnel and we'll add all kinds of steps. So that's pouring, and everything that we have on these shelves, if I could back up again, is going to promote order, concentration, coordination, independence, and strengthening and refining of the muscles that they use for handwriting, dressing, and so much else. So now these yellow works that you see below are spooning tasks. So they would bring that to the table, and in this case they have a lot of pairs, and they're doing this motion where they're going to turn the wrist and just do one at a time. Spooning again is going to start kind of simple with 1-to-1, and then they'll spoon these all back. And this is actually a trickier one. So we are moving from spooning these stones to spooning these pairs. And then if you look at something like this, which is the third thing on the shelf, not only are we using a smaller tool, and actually I'm going to switch this spoon because it should be this one that just only fits one. That's kind of a control of error, we call that. They're not only spooning with a small spoon that's a little trickier, but they're also potentially sorting. And so this would be the most difficult of the spoonings on this shelf. Below, you have one of my favorites, which is dry squeezing, or sometimes we call this tonging. And so you're gonna tong the pom-poms, and then a little harder, the strawberries. And then the hardest one on this shelf, even though they're larger, is going to be to tong these apples from left to right. And with these tongs, you have to do a lot of this squeezing. And this is really what helps when we talk about cutting. They're going to do the same motion. So you've got this squeezing motion to get through paper, and it's the same here, and you need to have strength. So these are fun, these are enticing, and easy to do with a friend, but the whole time, the indirect aim is to prepare the hand for these other tasks that you might think of are more traditionally academic. Below, we have wet squeezing. So you might hear about your child working on sponging. This is a really fun one, and bear with me, I know the camera work is a little off because I'm doing both things. But in this case, they will wet the tray and then use the sponge to soak it up. And each time the sponge is full, they'll come back to this bowl and squeeze it out, again, strengthening those fingers. And they'll continue for as long as they like. One of the things we always talk about in Montessori is repetition. It's really important. You wouldn't want to go to a job where you were introduced to a new skill and the next day you were introduced to a brand new set of skills. You want to get good at them. It feels good to master something, and children are driven towards mastery too. So also on the shelf is a simple transfer of water with sponge, which is going to involve the whole hand squeezing. And then there's a really fun one that has this funky baster. So if during the year you see that your child is spooning or basting or pouring, know that they're continuing towards mastery, they're continuing strengthening, they're working on order, they're working on longer concentration, and we're making the tasks more difficult as the year goes on. So thank you for coming along with this little introduction to this practical life shelf we call the transfer shelf. And this changes about every week. There's also some cleanup tools over here, what we call the dump bucket, and some cleaning towels. And so they'll work at these tables. Sometimes they bring it really close. Sometimes they're going to go way across the classroom, and they'll learn how to clean up spills as well. I'd love to show you more, and we will as the class goes on. Thanks, and I'm going to head back to the playground.